Based on the words of the sages,
Okay, so we're on Daf Chav Beis, and the Gemara was talking about the first. Second, please. The first Homer B'Kodesh. Homer B'Kodesh B'Truma. It mentioned the Ein Matpil and Kli B'Toch Kli. And the Gemara had two reasons. Ravila and Rava. Ravila said the reason is because the inner Kli might weigh down onto the outer Kli, and it's going to be a chatzitza. Agav, that would mean that the tefillah is not good for both kelim, the outside and the inside. Rava said that the issue is because sometimes the outer kli might not be a shvaferes hanod, and the tefillah will not help with the inner kli. And therefore, even if it is big, both cases, even if it's a light kli and it's not weighing down, and even if it's is a big opening, still they made a gzeira and they said that it's not a good tefillah for kodesh. The Gemara said that there's a manafkamina would be by salver gagusni, that it's a kind of a kli which the pashas would mean that it's porous and the water penetrates the walls, and therefore, according to Rava, wouldn't be a problem of the opening, and there would be no issue of the mouth. The mouth of the kli is not an issue. But according to Rava, that the issue is that it might weigh down, so it doesn't make a difference. Even salver gagusni is not that. Now the Gemara that's finished mentioning that Rava said so. Rava said that you could be matul and salver gagusni, and he mentioned even according to him also, if it will be it's not relevant to his din, but if you use a kind of a mechitza, if there's a mechitza in the mikvah, even if it's porous and water travels freely between both sides, also it's considered dividing the mikvah. That's what we had yesterday. Now the Gemara goes to continue about this halacha of the necessity to have a shoferes hanod, that the opening of the kli has to be a certain size in order to consider the water inside the bottle as mikvah water, that if you put inside needles or things that you want to be tovel, it has to be connected to the mikvah. So the Gemara starts, the mana, this bay. So this Dr. Fine had mentioned yesterday, that a kli that has a small mouth, are you going to say that you can't put it into the mikvah for itself because the water is not connected? The water inside the kli is not mikvah water. So that the Gemara says here for sure that you could be matul any size kli, even if it has a small opening. And here the Gemara says even more. If the outer kli is tameh, and when you're putting it into the mikvah, it's benefiting that it's going to become tahor. And then at that point, you say that the water that goes inside the kli is considered part of the mikvah in order to be metaher the outer kli. So we say that simultaneously, at that time, you can't say that at the same time that it is mikvah water and it's not mikvah water. If the outer kli is tahor and you're only using it as a vessel to contain the inner kalim, the needles that you put inside, so then the outer kli doesn't need it, and you want to know if the mikvah is connected, so it's not connected if it's a small hole. But if it's a tamei kli, and putting it into the mikvah now is going to benefit the outer kli also to become tahor, and you must say that the water inside the kli is considered part of the mikvah, even though it's a small opening. So then it also helps even for the needles that you want to put in. It's also going to be considered connected, even if it's not a shoferes hanod. That the Gemara says in these words, this issue that you have to have a big opening of the mouth of the outer kli is only if it's tahor, and it doesn't need any mikvah. If the outer kli is tamei, migo the salkat tefillah the since the mikvah does help for the outer kli for itself. This with the tefillah also helps for the kelim that are inside, and it is a good mikvah. He brings a proof to this. The words here are a little bit. Maybe you have to have some changing. The Magim, they say some words are a little bit different. If you look at the Mishnah, it doesn't say it exactly the way it says here. But kelim shemilim kelim b'tvilan abelutor. First, it says that you could be matbil kelim b'tor kelim, like we said in our Mishnah. It's only a chiddush of only a chumrah of kachim by kodesh. Second, please. But by regular kelim, chul and even truma, you're not the kelim b'tor kelim. That's what the Mishnah says first. Kelim shemilim kelim b'tvilan abelutor, and that's fine. V'im lo taval, the words are strange over here. The Gemara is going to fix it up. V'im lo taval, that literally means if you didn't immerse. What does that mean? Then my murav, they should say eina my murav, not shehu murav and gish shoferes hanod. Sometimes, whatever the case is, im lo taval, whatever that means, the Gemara is going to explain. Then it's only considered the mixed waters are considered mixed only if there's a size of shoferes hanod, which you said is the size of two etzbos to be able to turn like the place where you put the spout. But stick in the word aim. But the words don't make sense. If you didn't put it into the mikvah, what does that mean? What does that mean? So the word means Imlo Tova means if you don't need the mikvah for it. If the outer kli does not need a mikvah, why does it not need a mikvah? Because it's Torah anyway. So then it's not considered connected only if you have the size of a Shvaferes Hanod. How does that go? Imlo Tova, so then it's not considered connected only if it's the size of a Shvaferes Hanod. What does that mean? That if it does need a mikvah, then you don't need the size of a Shvaferes Hanod. Makes sense? My kamar again. What does that mean? If you don't need to be matbul, why? Because it's Torah. Then then it's not considered connected only if it's the size of a shvaferes hanod. So the Gemara successfully proved this halacha that the size that you have to have a big opening for the outer kli in order that inside the kli should be considered connected to the mikvah, in order to be matbul inside of it other kalim like needles or so. That's only if the outer kli is tahor and does not need the mikvah. So then we say it has to be an opening that's a sizable opening. But if the outer kli needs a mikvah because it's tameh, so then it surely is considered that the water inside is a mikvah water as far as that outer kli is concerned, that a mikvah works. Since it works for the outer kli, it also is considered connected with the inner kli also. So we learned a new halacha about shvaferes hanod. The Gemara goes back to the main issue that is machlokas Rabbah and Rabbi Ila. What's the reason of this whole halacha of kodesh that they made ein matbil and kalim b'tor kalim? Rabbi Ila said the reason is because the inner kli might be heavy and weigh down by a chatzitza. Rabbi said the reason not choshesh for that. Rabbi seems to be choshesh only that there shouldn't be a chash of a small neck, and therefore, that's the reason why he says that. So the Gemara said salver gugusni would be good according to Rabbi because there's no problem of the neck because the walls themselves pass water freely. So the Gemara found the machlokas tanam about this because we said that this is the nafkamina. And we find the Bryce it has machlokas about this nafkamina. Salva gagusi shemil kalim with bil and ben kodesh ben truma torin. Tanakama says that if you're using a kli which is porous like this basket or gagusni which was set as some kind of a strainer and the water passes freely between it. So then it's even good for kodesh. You filled it up with kalim. That's what Rava says. The Tanakama is like Rava that even for kodesh you could use it because there's no problem of a small neck because you don't need a neck at all. The walls themselves allow the water to go through. Abba Shalom, the Truma V'lo Kodesh. Abba Shalom says no. That even if it's a Salva Gadusni, the kodesh is not good. That would be in alignment with Rav Ila. That he holds that even if it's a porous kli, but the problem is that maybe the inner kli is going to be heavy, it's going to weigh down, it's going to be a chatzitza. So the machlokas between Rav and Rav Ila, we found to be machlokas tanom also. And end of that sugya. New sugya. Ihachi trumanami. So if we learn the Mishnah, we would probably have said that the reason why they made Gzeira for Kodesh and not for Truma is because Kodesh is more chamor, and it's a Gzeira only. It's not saying it's Benadin. So Truma we were not so much, more. But the Gemara is not satisfied. The Gemara wants to know that there should be a difference be'etzem inherently between Truma and Kodesh. How come this Gzeira applies only to Kodesh and they didn't make the Gzeira for Truma? It sounds like a nice Gzeira. It sounds like sometimes the Kli is going to be heavy. We're not going from here on in, we're not going to differentiate anymore what the reason is, whatever the reason is. Either like Riyavila says that the inner Kli is going to be heavy, maybe, and weigh down, or maybe like Rava, that it's a Gzeira that the neck might be a small neck and it's not going to be a Shvaferes Hanod. Whatever the reason is, doesn't make a difference anymore in this again. But we made a Gzeira, so how come this Gzeira doesn't apply to Truma also? That this Chumah only applies to Kodesh, not to Truma. Why not? It sounds like a nice chash. So the Gemara says, "Leman kamina chaverim made the yadi." To who are we going to talk? Means when we talk and say all this kind of takanas, who listens to us? Only the chaverim. Those people. Chaverim means like to me the chachamim, the ones that are makbid on tumah b'tara. Agav, it doesn't. In order to be a chaver, it doesn't have to be a talmud chacham. Even a tam oretz that he learns the certain halachas that he has to know, and he steps upon himself. Certain chumras that Chazal say he can come to Bezdin and say I want to be a chaver, and they give him, if he accepts upon himself all of these halachas, so then he also doesn't have to be dafka talmud chacham, but he's careful about the halachas that they tell him to do, and he won't make any mistakes. That's what a chaver is in the whole Gemara coming up. But sometimes they translate it as a talmud chacham, but that's the point, that somebody is careful about tumah b'tara. So if we're going to make this the kind of tour we're going to talk, only to the chaverim, the Amay Arvis, they don't listen to us anyway. So chaver made the yadi. There's no reason to make a takana for truma because they know the halachas. They know the halachas that you're not allowed to have a heavy kli inside, and they know the halachas that you have to have a big opening in order to. So they're not going to make any mistakes. There's no reason to say that you can't use a kli b'tor kli because they know when yes and when not. They're Talmidei Chachamim, and they know what you could use, what you can't use. So you can do a kli b'tor kli for truma, and if it's heavy, then no, not to. If it's a small bottleneck, they'll also know not to. No problem. So then the question is going to be obvious. The more is going to go back and forth. What's the difference between kodesh and truma? Yeah, it goes back and forth. Yachi kodesh nami, so it's not a problem. It's not a problem. The more answer is no, there is a problem. Even Amarasim don't come to ask us questions, but they do look at the Talmidei Chachamim. They know they don't know enough. They know that they're ignorant. So they go and see what the Talmidei Chachamim are doing. So let's say about a Kela mikvah over there. If the Chaverim are going to be matbel kli b'tor kli, so then the Amoris is going to see him doing that, and he's also going to do the same. And if the Amoris does it, then we have a problem because one day he'll have a heavy kli, he won't realize. One day he'll have a small bottleneck, he's not going to realize. So we do have to make the Gzeir percussion. So obviously it goes back and forth. So then Truma is the same problem also. It means that it's interesting. The Amoris, we're going to see in this Gemara, the Amoris of once upon a time was very, very smart. Like they were big to me the Chachamim compared to today. Today, how about to me the Chachamim should be like the Amoris once upon a time. But here the Gemara says that he also realizes there's a difference of Kodesh and Truma. So when he go to the mikvah about Kodesh, if they would see the Talmud Chacham that was being matbel kli b'tor kli, he'd do the same thing. He'd learn from him. So that's why we even though the Talmud Chacham knows what he's doing, but we told the Talmud Chacham, the Chaver, don't do it because the Amoris shouldn't learn from you. So then Truma also has the same problem. Truma nami chazil Amoris puzzle matbel. That should be the same problem. That if even though the Talmud Chacham himself knows when yes, when not, but if the Amoris will see that even for Truma also he does kli b'tor kli, so it'll also run the same problem. So why are you not concerned? They'll see the Talmud Chacham by Truma does do it, and he's going to learn to do that, and he'll make the problems of a heavy kli or a small bottleneck. The my answer is it doesn't affect us because we're not going to use the mistakes that the Amoris is going to make is not going to affect the Chaverim because we don't take Truma from them. What's the problem? He's going to have this kli that he thinks is kosher for Truma, it's Torah for Truma, and he's going to use Truma inside, and really might have become Tameh. If the tefillah wasn't good, if the immersion wasn't good, so it's really a Tameh kli, what's going to happen? He made the Truma Tameh. It's not going to affect the Talmidei Chachamim in any way. Are the Chaverim going to be affected? They're not going to be affected because they don't get Truma from the Amoris. The Amoris, and it's just a very general thing to understand that all the Amoris, they gave Truma. Who do they give it to? They give it to the Kohanim. But the Kohanim, if they realize, the Kohanim were Chaverim, and they realize that this is Amoris, they wouldn't take it from him because it's Truma Tmeya. They have to be, the Amoris is very nice, but he doesn't know the halachas well. So, and the Truma, you're not allowed to eat Truma Tmeya. So the Kohen Chaver will decline. He'll say, I'm sorry, I know, whatever, I don't need it, whatever he's going to say. But the Kohen will not accept Truma Tmeya, I'm sorry. He won't accept Truma from the Amoris because he has to be Choshesh that it's Truma, that it's Tameh. Who does Amoris give it to? The Gemara is going to say soon. He gives it to his friends. They are Kohanim that are Amoritz also. The farmer, Yisrael, who's Amoritz, he's going to give his Truma to the Kohen Amoritz because the Kohen Chaver is not going to accept it because he can't use it. It's Truma Tmeya as far as he's concerned. So the Amoritz, it's not necessary to make many takanas for the Amoritz. They also appreciate that we don't make many takanas for them. They don't want all these chomers, but it doesn't help them, and it doesn't concern us. It means that the Chaverim are not going to be affected by the tumah of the Amoritz because they don't take the tumah from the Amoritz. It's only in order to help them. We can't help them because the Amoritz are making a lot of mistakes, and it's going to be as tummy as it is. So I heard a marshal once. Let's say somebody is going to a chasana, he's all perfectly clean and nice suit, and he has a little speck on his suit. So someone points out, you have a little speck, take care of it. If someone's working in the garage and he has his overalls and he has a lot of stains and everything, someone comes over and says, you have a little speck on you. And I said, what do you want? So these takanas are making over here for the small shashas. So for the Chaverim, it's necessary to do that. But the Amoritz, he has other problems also. It's probably very tamei. He doesn't know the halachas well. Many halachas he doesn't know. And it could be that it's tamei. So we don't have to make takanas for them. But what the Gemara is going to say, take a few lines to say it, the Gemara is going to say that as far as Kodesh goes, it does affect us. It doesn't mean that it's going to affect us, mamish. Not that we're going to have to eat it, but it's going to be coming into the Beis HaMikdash. The kachim that he's doing is going to come into the Beis HaMikdash. We want to make sure that it's Torah. The Truma, we can't help him to eat Truma Torah because he's going to eat anyway what he's going to eat. The Kohanim that are Amoritz, they can accept from their Chaverim, from their friends, Amoritz. We can't help them. We can't make them Amoritz into a Talmud Chacham. We would like to. We would tell them, come into the Beis Medrash, spend time, but he's not. So by Truma, it's not necessary to make a gzeira. It's not necessary to make a gzeira. All these gzeiras here about Emrat Bil and Kalim without Kalim, because it's not going to be affecting anybody else than the Amoris themselves. So what can we do for them? But by Kodesh, it is going to affect. Why is it going to affect? The Gemara asks now, Kodesh Nami Lo and Kabul Minayu. So don't accept question from them either. If you're going to say that we don't accept because of Choshet at the Tameh, so when the Amoris brings Kachim to the base of Mikdash, also we shouldn't accept it from them. That would have been a big thing. If you don't accept Kachim from the Amoris, that means when he's going to come to the base of Mikdash, he wants to bring a Mincha or Nesachim. If he brings an animal, it's no problem. An animal has nothing to do with tumah. He brings a live animal. But if he's going to bring wine and oil to the Beis HaMikdash, we're going to say, I'm sorry, this is we can't accept it. That's going to cause a big problem. Have you la'eva? That's what the margin is going to be animosity. They're going to say, you don't allow us to come to the Beis HaMikdash. So truma now we have la'eva. Why is there not going to be animosity if we don't accept the truma? The Gemara says he's not care. He doesn't care. He's not thrown out of Am Yisrael. Lo ichbas le the azal yav le kohen amor it's chavre. They give him truma. He doesn't give it. So he says, okay. So they're big tamid the chachamim. They're choshes that it's tamid. Okay, I'll give it to my friend amor. It's no problem. But if you're going to say that in the Beis HaMikdash is not accepted, there is no Beis HaMikdash, other Beis HaMikdash. There's not the Beis HaMikdash of the Tamid Chachamim and the Beis HaMikdash of the Am Haaretz. And if we are going to make animosity, then they're going to build a new Beis HaMikdash with Am Haaretz, and that's very dangerous. We don't want to make them to build another Beis HaMikdash. So we do have to accept the kachim that they bring in order to make sure that the kachim is going to be Torah. We made this zera that Tamid Chachamim shouldn't do kli b'tor kli, because if we do, so then the Amoris is going to see him and do the same thing. And when he does a kli b'tor kli, one time it might be a heavy kli, one time it might be that it's a small bottleneck. So therefore, we have to make sure that the kachim stays tall. But the truma, we're not going to accept it for ourselves. It's not relevant to us, and for themselves anyway. They come in, they don't listen to us. So it's not necessary to make the example also on truma. The Gemara says on this point about animosity. The Gemara brings other places where we see that we be careful not to make animosity between the Am Haaretz and the Chaverim and the Tamid Chachamim in a way that's going to push them away. Man Tana D'Chai Shleiva, who's the author, who's the Tana that has this concern? There shouldn't be animosity from the Am Haaretz. Rabbi Yossi, the Tana of Rabbi Yossi, Mipnema, Kol Amana Maltas and V'Shem Kol Moshe Shana. How come everybody's trusted that their wine and their oil is Tohor the whole year round for Kachim? This is going to be later on in the Masechta, and by Truma, the Gemara is going to say, we'll see that in the first beginning of the season, everyone is Torah. But once the season goes on, then the Am can't be trusted anymore. But for Kachim, Rabbi Yossi says, the Mishnah says that they're trusted the whole year round. Whenever the Amoris comes to the Beis HaMikdash with wine or with oil, and he says that it's Torah for Kodesh, we trust him and we use it. How come? Really, we know he makes a lot of mistakes. In order people shouldn't go and make their own mizbeach, they're going to make their own bama. When you're not allowed to make bamos, but shas is a bamos, and they can make their own paraduma, they're going to have a chef for Judaism. They're going to say that Tamid Chachamim, they don't accept us in the Beis HaMikdash, we'll go someplace else. We're very scared.
It doesn't mean that they've got a higher madrega and they're worthy of being trusted, but they'll go
right,
really right, and they'll mess up everything.
They'll make a new Beis HaMikdash. And that's the problem. So because of that concern,
but forego the
right. So we try to make, but we make as many tikkunas as we can. Of course, the Amoris also, but Kachim is more careful. Also, he knows also to be more careful, and we're also going to help them out that they shouldn't make any mistakes. That's why we said that by in matbil and kalim without kalim, even for the chaverim themselves, it's not so important to make such a tikkun because they know the halachas that if it's a heavy kli, don't put it in kli without kli. If it's going to be a small bottleneck, don't use it. They would know how to differentiate. But Am Haaretz, in general, they know the general halachas, but they don't know the details. And if they're going to say that you're allowed to use a kli b'tor kli, they're going to sometimes make a mistake and use a heavy one and use a small bottleneck. So therefore, we made a takana that even the chaverim, when they go to mimatl things for kodesh, don't use kli b'tor kli in order to safeguard Am Haaretz, that they should learn from them and make a mistake. That's the end of that. That's the end of that.
So we have piece. We more makpid on ourselves. So in order that myself included.
The Chaverim, if you learn the Gemara, you're considered from the Chaverim. The people, the ones
you
who
learn the Gemara and I listen.
That's why the Gemara is saying that the people who learn the halacha, so then they know how to differentiate. But if not, they just see what does it mean. Amoris, he doesn't learn the halachas. He doesn't. So what does he do? He looks. He goes to the mikveh keli and he sees the rabbi. So he says he did it. So, but he doesn't know how to discern the fine details. So we'll see that he does kli b'tor kli. He comes home, tells his wife, the rabbi did kli b'tor kli. We can do kli b'tor kli. And then he takes the needles, puts it into the bottle, and it's not. And really, it's not a good. It's not a good tefillah. So in order to safeguard that the Hamara shouldn't make mistakes by kachim, so we do the best and we even are careful ourselves in order they should not learn mistakes from us. But by truma, that it's not going to be coming to the any Beis Hamikdash. It's not going to go to the Kohen Chaver. It's just for them. For them, they do their best and they make mistakes, and we can't help them because they don't want to learn. So it's not necessary to make more takanas for them. The more Sakasha, next week is going to go on for a while, and the question is that even though we don't need their truma, but we do borrow their kelim, a chaver will go to his next door neighbor, Amoritz, and ask him for a bowl, for a pot, and he lends it to him. And if it was not designated for kachim, was designated for truma, so he might have done kli b'tor kli. It's true, the food that he puts into the pot and truma, then he goes to the Kohen Chaver, the Kohen Chaver will decline and say, I'm sorry, I can't accept it. But the pot, or the plate, or the fork, or the spoon, whatever, he does accept. I should not say about a pot, I should talk about a needle or something like that, something small, that maybe, or something heavy, that there might have been kli b'tor kli, it might have been in a way that it might have been with a mistake. How can you borrow kalim from Amoritz? The Gemara is going to go at length to say that we do borrow, that the Chaverim do borrow kalim from Amoritz. How could you borrow? Shouldn't you be choshesh that is stomach? Because if we didn't make this like kind of kli b'tor kli for truma, only for kachim, so it's true. The truma is not the food truma is not going to come to us, but the keli might come to us. The Gemara is going to go at length to show that we do borrow. It's going to take till the next couple of lines till the Amud Beis to show that Talmidei Chachamim may borrow kalim from an Amoritz, and therefore the kasha is a standing kasha. And they did it kli b'tor kli. If they did it kli b'tor kli, they might have made a mistake and done a heavy kli or done a small bottle kli. That's the most kasha. If we may, just to jump for a second, and scroll up a lot, just to see the answer to the question, and just to put it on hold, that the answer is coming up, but it's going to take a long time till the answer comes. Tosis points out the Gemara should have known it right away. It seems to be simple, and it's really that low down, and it's in the green over here. The Gemara is going to say, when you borrow it, you have to put it into the mikvah. Simple answer. You could borrow the kli from the Amoritz, but you have to borrow it. You go to the mikvah, put it into the mikvah because it might have been tamei, and then you wait till Harav Shemesh, you wait till at night, and then you can use it at night. That's the answer. It's a simple answer, but it takes the Gemara all these lines over here just to point out that we do borrow kalim. But that's going to be the simple answer. The Gemara is really
always trying to make it easier for the Amaratzim. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. I'm not sure what you mean to say. Well, the question was that if we allow the Amoritz to, not the Amoritz, we allow to do kli b'tor kli. The Amoritz is going to learn that. He might make a mistake sometimes and do a heavy kli or a small bottleneck, and it'll come out that it wasn't a good tefillah. And we said that we're not concerned because it's not going to affect us. The Amoritz himself, he has a lot of problems with that, but it can't help him. We can't help him, and it's not going to affect us. The Gemara is asking, it does affect us because we borrow kalim from them, and that kli might have been only done not for kodesh, only for truma, and it should be a problem. And the Gemara is going to answer to this question: yes, you're allowed to borrow a kli, but you have to put it to the mikveh first and wait till at night. But the Gemara is going to go at length to show that you are allowed to borrow kli from a Amoritz, and we'll get to the answer eventually. We'll continue. I just want to point out over here how smart Amoritz is in those days. This is like people don't know anything about this. Just a little hakdama, a little preface that there's too much mace. If there's a dead corpse in a room, so there's too much oil that goes all over the room, and anything becomes tummy. And also, if there's an opening between this room and the next room, it goes to the next room also. If the door's closed, it'll stop it. But if there's a hole between the two rooms, so the tumah passes throughout the ohel. There's something called a klicheres. A klicheres is an earthenware vessel that is not vulnerable to tumah from its outside. It means even if the mace would touch the outside of the klicheres, it doesn't become tummy, only in the inside. So too, if you have a klicheres that's in the oil mace, so if it's open, so then the tumah spreads out to the whole area, to the whole air, and the inside of the kli becomes tameh, and the klicheres becomes tameh. But if you have a tight-fitting cover, some with puzzle, so then the tumah doesn't enter into the kli. Just to give an easier, for our purposes, an easier example throughout the Gemara, if you have two rooms, the mace is in one room, and people and kalim are in the other room, and there's a hole between the two in the wall, so the tumah will pass from one room to the next room. But if you put a klicheres, you stuff up the hole with a klicheres in a way that the back, not the opening of the klicheres, the back of the klicheres is facing the room of the mace, so the other room is protected because the tumas mace doesn't penetrate a klicheres on the outside of a klicheres. So you got the picture that there's two rooms, the mace is in one, there's a wall in between, the wall has a hole, but in the hole there's a klicheres with its back, the bottom of the kli facing the room of the mace, and that saves the tumah. It's a block because the tumah cannot penetrate the outside of a klicheres, and therefore the other room, the tumah doesn't enter.
That's all.
Another halacha to know is that if that kli that's inside the hole, that kli cheres, if it's tameh, so then the tumah could penetrate it. Let's say the kli cheres became tameh from the inside. How does the kli cheres become tameh? If something touched the inside, so then the whole kli cheres becomes tameh.
Yeah, but what about a lesser tumah?
There's even a less tumah. Doesn't have to be less mace. A sheretz was inside the cheres became tameh, and now you put this kli cheres even after sheretz. The sheretz is not there anymore. But once it became tameh, and you put it with its back towards the mace, it doesn't help anything. A kli tameh does not have the power to hold back the tumah. Now, this Amoritz knows
learning in that.
Okay, this is the Amoritz. So here we have that's the introduction to these halachas. Now it says here, let's to picture in the whole Gemara here. Let's picture this case of two rooms, and one room is a mace, and the other room is a regular kitchen, whatever you have over there, people, kelim, food, and there's a hole in the wall, and there's a kli cheres with this back facing the side of the mace. So the Mishnah says, kli cheres matzil ala kol divrei Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says that the other room, the kitchen over there, the other room that's adjacent to the room where the mace is, that the kli cheres is blocking the tumah from coming in, so it blocks the tumah, and everything in the other room is tahor. Matzil ala kol, it saves everything. That's what Beis Hillel says. It only saves the food and the drink and earthenware vessels that are in the kitchen and the other room. But if there'll be metal kalim or wooden kalim, things that could go into the mikvah, so then they become tameh. It doesn't make any sense so far. It sounds like a mystery. What is Bishami talking about? That there's a mace in one room, there's an earthenware vessel blocking the passageway, and in the other room, there are people, and there are all kinds of kalim, and also food and drink, and kli cheres. So Bishami says everything becomes tameh except for the food and the drink and the kli cheres. That's in the next room. What are you talking about? Why should that be? Because that earthenware vessel might be tameh. We said that it only saves if it's not tameh. If that kli cheres is not tameh, but if it's tameh, it's not doesn't stop the tumah. And Amoritz has all kinds of tumas. Tumas Amoritz, we choshesh that he doesn't know the halachas, he making mistakes, he's tameh. So if he has if Amoritz, if it'll be an Amoritz, we have to be choshesh. Sometimes it's an Amoritz. So the Amoritz will think that his kli is really tahor and it blocks the tumah, and really it doesn't. Make sense so far? The kli cheres that's blocking the tumah from coming from one room to the next, if it's tahor, it'll do a successful block. If it's tameh, it won't do a successful block. And Amoritz, we have to be choshesh is tameh. If the Amoritz put a kli cheres to block the tumah, he doesn't know, but we know that it's tameh. If it's tameh, it doesn't block the tumah. So we have to say that we have to look at it as if it does not block the tumah, and everything in the kitchen over there became tameh.
What does Beis Shammai say?
That's what Beis Shammai says, that everything becomes tameh. But the question is, how about the food and drink and the kli cheres? Some people doesn't say that's tameh. He says, Beis Shammai said, if nature tameh agav Amoritz, al gabi Amoritz, that's what it stands for, al gabi Amoritz. The inkli tameh chotzetz, that we have to be choshesh that the Amoritz made the kli cheres to become tameh, and therefore kli which is tameh is not able to stop the tameh. So then Beis Hillel said, okay, so then the food also should be tameh. And you yourself also agree that the food, drink, and kli cheres that's in the other room is tahor. If you say that the kli is maybe tameh, so then it shouldn't stop the tumah for anything, and everything should become tameh in the next room.
Okay. Well, you selected.
Yes. Now we're going to get to the point about borrowing things. They say it very nice. Next page. If we say that the food and drink and the kli cheres, which doesn't go into the mikvah, is tahor, who does it affect? It doesn't affect anybody else besides the Amoritz. Who's going to eat it? The chaver is not going to eat the truma of the chaver of the Amoritz, and not the drink, and not the kli cheres, because he has to be choshesh that all of it is tameh. And so the chaver will not use all of that, but the kli it does affect the chaver also. How does the kli affect the chaver? Because he's going to borrow it. That's what the Gemara is going to bring from this Mishnah, that you see that the Talmidei Chachamim, they do borrow. The reason why Beis Shammai made the takana is because the Talmid Chacham is going to come to borrow the kli of an Amoritz, just to put a gdam over here. They have to stick in that the Amoritz is not suspect, that he doesn't know the halachas of tumas meis. This is such a huge Talmid Chacham, this Amoritz, that the Amoritz knows all the halachas of tumas meis, and he's very careful about that. So when a chaver wants to borrow a kli from an amoritz, he doesn't have to be choshesh that is tamei meis. That the amoritz knows, but other kinds of tumas he doesn't know. But here is I don't know how to say it, a nice English word, that here the tumah, the regular low grade tumah is going to affect a tumas meis. The amoritz doesn't realize it. He's careful tumas meis, but he doesn't realize that a low level tumah over here is going to affect the tumas meis. He's not going to realize it. This klicheres that's inside the wall that he thinks is not tamei, we choshesh that it is tamei. And if it is tamei, so then the tumas meis in the next room penetrated the wall and it came into the next room and everything became tamei, and he doesn't realize that. So he'll say, "Here's a kli," and the Talmud Chacham will take it, and he won't be choshesh for tumas meis, and he'll use it. That's what the Gemara wanted to read from this Mishnah, that you see that you do borrow a kli. If we could skip a second, just to skip a second to the bottom of about 20 lines, and the Gemara says, if you see on the screen, we'll come back in a second. That's when the is one line. We're on the Amid Beis already. That was the first two lines. Now skip about 20 lines. The last one on the line is Katani. Katani mias loch v'lo. Amashai lin minai. What the Gemara wanted from all this is this the second line of the Gemara that says loch v'lo, that the kalim that you put into the mikvah are going to affect also the Talmud Chacham because we borrow from them. All this was to prove that the Talmid Chacham may borrow kalim from the Amoritz. So that's the Gemara's kasha. But how come that's the whole outcup, as they say, to see where the Gemara is going. The Gemara said that the Truma, you're allowed to do kli b'tok kli, and we don't care that the Amoritz is going to learn from you because it's not going to affect you. The Gemara's the kasha, the choshesh, that you're going to borrow kli from him. As we see in this whole mission over here, that the Talmud Chacham does borrow kelim from Amoritz. That's why over there, Beis Shammai said, Lach v'lo, that the food that we make, say, is Torah, is not going to affect you because you don't eat this food, and you don't use this klicheres. But other kelim, you put to the mikvah, it does affect you, so you see that you borrow kelim. And therefore the Gemara is asking, so over here also, how come we're not makbid on kli b'tok kli in order that Amoritz shouldn't learn from us and do kli b'tok kli because you might borrow from him? That's all one bikasha. And the Gemara is going to answer, you have to put it, you have to put it into the mikvah. That's going to be the answer coming up. Before we go further, we'll go into the parentheses that we skipped. It's going to be the same thing over again, but much more dramatic and vivid about this issue about Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, about this klicheres inside the wall that's blocking the tumah. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yoshua, Boshim B'Devrechem Beis Shammai. Rabbi and the next room, the food and the drink and the klicheres is Torah and everything else is tamei. Like, I'm embarrassed that he said such a thing. Efsher, it's like ironic. Efsher, Isha Lasha Bareva, Isha Bareva Tmein, Shiva, and Basik Torah. What kind of foolishness could that be? If you have the mace in one room, and the next room is the kitchen, and the woman is kneading a dough, and we're going to, in this case, the mace and the klicheres, the whole scenario, and we're going to say, they come to the Rav is going to say the woman is tamei, the bowl is tamei, but the dough is Torah. Like, what sense is there? He didn't understand. The same thing as before. He didn't understand. We know the answer of Beis Shammai already, like it says in the top line, the Taras Aflisha Tiato Lachvalo. He doesn't know that. The Gemara is a brisa, which is also explaining the same thing as the Mishnah before, but it's a bit more dramatic in the whole Kasha and Teretz. Beis Shammai says it doesn't make sense. I'm embarrassed of the things that you said. And another ironic case. Lagin, the word should be lagin. It means a kind of a pitcher. Lagin moli mashkin. There's a pitcher full of water, of liquid. Lagin tamei tuma shiva mashkin torin. That is it possible that you're going to say they come to the Rav and ask what happened with the mace was in one room with the charas blocking it, and in the next room there was a pitcher of water. Let's say the pitcher is tamei for 7 days, like too much mace, and the water is torah. How can it be such a thing? I'm embarrassed of such foolishness. So Talmud of the school of Shammai. I'm not sure what the word nitwa would mean, like he addressed him, whatever. Should I tell you Rabbi Shammai's reason? Yeah, go ahead, tell me, explain to me. So the Talmud said to Rabbi Yeshua, if a kli is tamei, does it have the ability to stop the tumah? So he said, no. No, a kli which is tamei is not. Then he asked him another question. Kli shel amoritz tamei or torah? Could you assume that the kli of amoritz is tamei, or is torah, or do you have to be choshesh that is tamei? So he said, amalo tamei. Now he said, could you tell the amoritz that to tell him that his kelim are considered tamei? If you're going to tell him that you have to be choshesh that your kelim are tamei, and therefore the klicheres was not blocking, was not a good block, is he going to trust you? If you're going to start saying that his kelim are tamei, he's going to say, you don't know anything. I'm more Torah than you are. So That's the psychology of people. That if you become very frum, he's going to say, you're frum. We're more frum. And we're going to be the ones who are, we're not going to look at your Torah. He's going to make his own paradum also. But the point is to say that here it doesn't explain the difference between lach and lo. That's what the Gemara wanted before. That was the reason of Beishamai, that the Choshish, that the Kli is Tamei, and that's why the person is Tamei, the Kli Matfis is Tamei, the Kli is Tamei. He doesn't explain this point, how come the food is Tahor, because it doesn't affect us. That only affects him, it doesn't affect us. But anyway, the Gemara finishes off the story over here.
It's the same answer to Beit Hillel.
He's explaining Beishamai. They still didn't understand Beishamai, and Beishamai explained themselves. And Bishua was very impressed with the answer, and he was very, he retracted very much the insult that he said to Beishamai. Biyad halacha Bishua v'nishtatech al kivi Beishamai. So Bishua went to the graves of Beishamai, and nishtatech means like he spread himself out, like he was asking mechila. He was asking forgiveness for insulting them. I spoke harshly against you. I'm asking mechila from you, the bones of Beishamai. The things that I don't understand are so great and deep. So surely the things that are more explicit, surely how great are your words. That the rest of his life, it seems that his teeth became black from his fast. He was fasting from the insult that he insulted Beishamai, so he had fast days in order to atone for his mistake. Anyway, what do you see from all this? That it is mutter for a Talmud Chacham to borrow a Kli Amoritz. Katani Mias, Lacha below. That the Kalim of the Amoritz affect also Tamid Chachamim. You said they did not borrow Kalim. So the Kash comes back. If you borrow Kalim from Truma, Kalim from the Amoritz, so how come you allow to be matbul Kli b'toch Kli? The Amoritz will make a mistake and sometimes do a heavy Kli, sometimes do a small bottleneck, and therefore it's going to affect us when we borrow the Kalim from him. So the Gemara says the simple answer that we've expected the whole time, that you have to put into the mikvah. Which really the Gemara knew the whole time. That of course, you buy a Kli from Amoritz, you have to put it into the mikvah. But what the Gemara does want is that's what does Beishamai want. The whole issue of Beishamai is that he says l'chav v'lo, that it's negate to you. It's not negate to the Talmud Chacham. When he's going to borrow it, he's going to put it into the mikvah. That's what the Gemara wants to get to. Yachi nehadru lehu beisilo Beishamai kishalin minayim atmudin lehu let beisilo kal Beishamai. We don't have any problem with the kalim. When we're going to borrow the kli, we're going to put it into the mikvah anyway. What's the problem? The Gemara's going to answer, yes, you put it into the mikvah and use it that night, but you don't put it into the mikvah and then go on the third and seventh day to get sprinkled with the paraduma waters in order to make it out of Tamei Meis. Tamei Meis, boy, Azar, Gimel Vazayin. If it's a Tamei Meis, it's going to have to be sprinkled on the third and seventh day. That's the halacha Tumas Meis. How do you get rid of Tumas Meis? With the waters of the ashes of the water of the paraduma. So you have to have a 7-day process in order to get purified from Tumas Meis. When you borrow a Kli, you don't use it for 7 days. You don't borrow it for 7 days. So it's not practical. It means to borrow a Kli from Amoritz and put it in the mikveh and use it at night, you have Harv Shemesh, that's okay. And that's what we do. The Tamid Chachamim, when they want to borrow, of course they're choshish that the Amoritz is Tamei. But here, the problem is that maybe his Kalim are going to become Tamei Meis. Because this is what we said before, that this mistake of regular Tumah has an offshoot that is going to even cause Tumas Meis, and he doesn't realize it. He has the Kli and the Kli Cheres that's blocking the 2 rooms of the mace and the other in the kitchen or whatever, and he doesn't realize that Kli is Tamei, the Kli Cheres is Tamei, and the Tumas Meis traveled from the room of the mace to the other room, and over there are Kalim, and that Amoritz doesn't dream that the Kalim are Tamei Meis, even though he knows Hilchos Tumas Meis, but he didn't realize that the regular Tumah over here had an effect. Offshoot that it affected Tumas Meis, and if we're not going to make sure that doesn't happen, so we're going to end up borrowing Kalim from the Amoritz and it's Tamei Meis, and we're going to put it into the mikvah and use it that night. Didn't take care of the problem. The problem is Tumas Meis. So therefore, Shammai said you have to make such a new law that the Kli Cheres doesn't save the Kalim. It only saves the food, the drink, and the Kli Cheres, but it doesn't save other Kalim. And that way, when the Talmud Chacham is going to borrow the Kli from the Amoritz, he can be sure that it didn't get Tamei Meis. And the Amoritz knows this halacha. Once you tell him this halacha, he knows that also. He knows that Kli Cheres could block Tumah, but he knows that Kli Cheres does not block Tumah no, he doesn't. No, that doesn't help him. He knows that, but he doesn't think that he's Tamei. That does not enough to tell him. You can't tell him that it's playing Kalim Tamei. He thinks he knows. But he knows this new halacha that we said. It came out of new halacha from the Bezdin that a Kli Cheres is not matzil on Kalim. Why? he couldn't figure it out. But that's what they told him, and he accepts it. And therefore, when the Talmud Chacham is going to borrow kelim from him, he's sure that there wasn't in a situation that it was in the kitchen when there was a klicheres that was blocking the tumah from the other room, because Amoris knew this new halacha. He accepted it, and he says that klicheres is Amasel. He would have known that the kelim becomes Tami Meis. He would have taken care of it, sprinkle on it for the third and seventh day, and it will be torn. All that was, I hope it was enjoyable. The Gemara continues now. Next point. There's difficulty in this Gemara. Rashi says Pshat, Rashi has a kasha on it. I don't have clarity. I'll just say what it says, and if anybody has a kasha, so Taisa has the kasha.
Outside? No.
Here's the kasha, Taisa over here. The kasha of Bochanan. So we'll just point it out that there's a problem in our Gemara, and I don't know what the answer is. So I'll just read the Gemara. If somebody has a problem, they'll see it on Taisa.
What is this third?
Vatfila. You see on the screen, on the first one on the line is Yomei, and then there's after the word Inchi, that a person doesn't buy a kli for 7 days, period. No sugya. More or less going back on the sugyas before. Vatfila lo mehemni. Do we not trust the Amoritz that he also immersed his kelim? That it says in the Brisa that you do trust the Amoritz for Tumas Meis. Which actually has a problem that we're not talking about Tumas Meis. That's what the problem is.
Talking about Tahara, the other mine.
And not Tumas Meis. So we're not talking about that Mecha. We're talking about regular Tefillah, not for Tumas Meis. That's Taisa's kasha that the Gemara is mixing up kasha Bochanan, who's talking about Tumas Meis. He was saying that Tumas Erev, that you can trust Amoros when you buy a kli, that you have to put it to the mikvah, but not for Tumas Meis. So, but the Gemara seems to ignore that difference. So we'll just read the Gemara as it is. The Bryce here says that you do trust Amoros, and now we're saying that you can't trust Amoros when you borrow a kli, you have to immerse him. That he's only trusted to make sure that his body is not Tamei Meis. But on his kelim, he's not trusted. And the kelim, when you borrow from him, you do have to immerse him. That even by kelim also sometimes he's trusted, sometimes not. That if he says that you ask him, you borrow a plea from him, you borrow, and you ask him, did you ever immerse a kli b'tor kli? Did you ever immerse two kelim together, one inside the other? If he says no, you can trust him. Means Amo is not a bad guy. He just doesn't the intricacies he doesn't discern. So he makes mistakes. You can't trust him on small details. But in general, the generalities he also wants to do. So if you ask him, did you ever put a kli b'tor kli into a mikvah? And if he says no, you can trust him. There's nothing to make a mistake over there. But if you asked him, if you told him, did you ever do a kli? He says, I did a kli b'tor kli, but I made sure that the opening should be a fair unknown. It was the right size. That's already too much. We don't trust him because maybe he thought it was big enough. It wasn't big enough. He didn't know how to measure well. So that's what Rabbi says, that you do trust. If you would say b'feish, ask the Amoritz, you want to take a kli from the Amoritz, and you ask him, so we said before you have to put him to the mikvah. Not like Gemara saying it depends. So you can ask him a question also. If you ask him a straightforward question and it has a simple, straightforward answer, you can trust him enough to put him to the mikvah. Why do you ask him? Did you ever be matbil a kli b'tor kli? If he says never, so then you're allowed to take it without putting it into the mikvah. But if he says, yes, I put it into the mikvah kli b'tor kli, but I was careful that the outer kli should be a big hole, then we don't trust him. And the Gemara brings a similar idea to show, but this Vatanya here, first one on the line, is not like a kasha. It's Vatanya b'nichusa. It's going to bring a brisa to show that this is true. That the Amoritz is believed when it's a straightforward, simple answer. But if it has intricacies, then you don't trust him. You don't think that he's not able to discern.
What is Vatanya? What?
B'nichusa.
B'nichusa means?
B'nichuta. Rashi. There's Rashi. You see the Rashi here? B'nichuta. That means not a question, not b'tmiya, but b'nichusa. Usually Vatanya is like a question, an attack. And here, sometimes it's not. You have to take it from the context. Here it's not coming as a kasha, it's coming to support it. It's going to support this idea that Amoritz is believed and trusted when you ask him a straight question and a straight answer without any intricacies. It says, if you ask Amoritz if this food ever became wet and became the way that it became mushal kabul tumah. So if he says no, it ever became wet, you can trust him. He's not out to get you. He's not out to make mistakes. And it's a straightforward thing, so you can trust him. But if he says it did become it did became wet, But since then, he never came in contact with Tumah. Then you can't trust him because he doesn't know the lachas of Tumah well. Next point, the Gemara Sakasha Vagufa Mimehemen to put a period over here if you want to. Gufo Mimehemen, do we trust the Amoris on his own body? That's said before you do trust him. But Tanya Chaber Shabal Hazos Mazan Allah Miyad, but Amoris Shabal Hazos and Mazan Allah Vachiyasa B'Fanem Shlishi Yishpi. They used to have they call it Chalonot. They had windows, sprinkling stations. They have places where you can go to get sprinkled onto from the water of the Paraduma. People were tummy mace, so they had places where you came and they said, "I'm tummy mace and sprinkle on me on the third and seventh day." So if Talmud Chacham comes and he says, "Today's the third day. I became tummy 2 days ago. It was Sunday. I became tummy mace. There was a funeral on Sunday. Today's Tuesday. Today's the third day. Please sprinkle on me." So we do. We sprinkle on. We say, "Come back on the seventh day." But if Amoritz comes and he says, "Sprinkle on me," we don't trust him that it's the third day. Maybe he made mistakes with the calculations. So we tell him, "Come back in 2 days." Means that we can't come back on Thursday. Tuesday, yeah. Comes on Tuesday, we come back on Thursday. We want to make sure that he had it 3 days. So we don't trust him. So that's the most question, then how can we trust him that he went to the mikveh? You say, "Go for me, Muhammad." You see you don't trust him. They take out the word El over here, they erase the word Ella. That since he sees we're so stringent about him, when he comes on Tuesday, the Tamid Chachamim, we let him go step right up. And the Amos, we say come back on 2 days later. So he sees that we're very particular. He wants to make sure that he does it right. So therefore, when he goes to the mikveh, he makes sure that he does it in order that he shouldn't have to come back again.
Push it all 2 days forward.
We do push it off in order to make sure that's the third day of the summer. But the other things we do trust him already because he sees that we're not playing around, we're not making games. Like we make sure that it's good. So he wants to make sure that the rabbis are not going to be too tough on him. So he makes sure he does a good job. Okay, in general, we've got the general idea, a lot of intricacies over here, but Be'ez Hashem will be chaverim one day and we'll be able to know all these halachas. We'll go over it again. We'll summarize it soon, but just to continue the Gemara for the day. It says the next thing about the Chomer b'Kodesh was Acharayim v'Tochu Beis HaSfita the Kodesh of Latruma v'Lo Kodesh, that the clear certain parts, the inside, the outside, the handle, the rim, the Mishnah says that as far as Truma goes, if one part became Tameh, the other parts don't become Tameh. But by Kodesh, any part that becomes Tameh, the whole thing becomes Tameh. So first of all, I want to know what does this mean? What does it mean? The outside, the inside. A Mishnah in probably Kalim. Yeah, Mishnah in Kalim.
Not only is one
Why is it not working over here? Kiritnan, Klish and Itma Chorov, the Mashkin, Achorov Tamei, and Tocho Ogno Ozno, Yodav Torah. This is not by Tumah de Raisa. The Tumah de Raisa made a Kli Tamei, so there's no difference where it became Tamei. This is not talking about a Kli Cheres. A Kli Cheres doesn't become Tamei from the outside. That was a whole sugya before, that an earthenware Kli was not susceptible to Tamei from the outside of the Kli. But here's talking about other kinds of Kalim, and how did they become Tamei? Only Tumah de Rabbanan, that liquid came on the outside. Tamei liquid came on the outside, so it makes the Kli Tamei. But it says the difference. Achorov Tamei, but Tocho Ogno, only the back is Tamei. If Tumah touched the outside of the Kli, only the outside is Tamei, but the inside is Torah. Tocho, and also Ogno, the rim of the Kli. Ozno is the ear, like when you have a handle, like a cup that has a hand, has a ring. That's called the ear of the Kli, like any kind of tea cup has a ozen, that's called the ozen. And also you have a yad. The yad would be like a frying pan that has a handle, a straight handle, different kinds of handles. All those things are Torah. It means we divide the Kli into different parts, and only the outside that you touch is Tamei, Nitmatov and Nitmakulo Tamei. But if the inside became Tamei, then the whole thing became Tamei. And not Gemara saying that's only as far as Truma goes. But as far as Kachim, if any part became Tamei, the whole thing becomes Tamei. The Mishnah said about Beis HaSvita, there's also a third part of the Kli. It says Chorayim and Toch and Beis HaSvita. What's Beis HaSvita mean? So the really means, like we just said, the rim, the handle, the ogno, ozno, the place where you hold on to it. My Beis HaSvita, what do those words mean? The place where you hold on to it. Like we said, the rim, ogno. Ogno means the rim that you hold on to. You can hold on to the bowl with the rim. Or ozen is what we call, I don't know what this is called in English, the handle. But a handle is not like a frying pan handle, but ozen. It's called an ear. It has an ear, the ear of the Kli. So that's the place we hold on to it. So why is it called Beis HaSvita? Over there in Megillas Rus, it says when Boaz gave to Rus some of the roasted wheat, or was it barley over there? So over there it says that by Yitzchak, That's like a one-time word. And nowadays, when in Hebrew they made svita, means like a pinch. They call it a svita. It comes from here. But svita means to hold on to something, like you gave it over to her. There's a question of if the girsa is supposed to be svita with the test or with the iron. Are they arguing in the girsa? Was it svia? I'm not sure. But it seems that he's saying a pshat with svita means by yitzpot, that it means to hold on to. And here, Yochanan says the place where the Nikiyah Das, some say, what's that, the girsa over here? Seba. So I saw a pshat in the earth they bring down that when you want to drink, it's interesting pshat, that when you want to drink from a cup and you don't know if someone else drank from it, so what's the safest place hygienically to drink from it? So he might have drank from all around the rim, but over the handle, people don't drink from over the handle. So that would be the place where in the Nikiyah Das, people that are finicky, they want to make sure that there are no germs or no whatever. So they drink from over the handle because over there nobody drank it. So that's another way of saying it means the same thing. It means the handle part. So the kli is divided into the outside, the inside, and the handles. And by truma, it's considered separate zones. And if one became tamei, not necessarily the other ones become tamei. Everything becomes tamei. But by kachim, any part that became tamei, the whole thing becomes tamei. Okay. Tani Rav Beiboy Kamei Rav Nachman Kol HaKelim Ein Lehem Achraim B'toch Echad Kachei Mikdash V'Echad Kachei Agdul. He said a statement that doesn't make sense. He said over a brisa that says that all kelim, there's no distinction between the inside and the outside. No difference if it's kachei mikdash or kachei agvul. Kachei mikdash means karbanos, things that are in the base of mikdash. Kachei agvul, the means kachim that are outside of the base of mikdash. Kachim was outside the base of mikdash. The Gemara thinks that it means truma. Amalei kachei agvul, ma'ninu truma. You mean to say that by truma also you have to be makbid that ein lamachavayim b'tov, that distinction between if the outside and the inside, that was we just said the Mishnah. The Mishnah says by truma there is a distinction. By kachim there's no distinction. And here the brayso that he said over kachei agvul seems to mean truma, and he says there's no distinction between the inside between different parts of the kli. Kachei agvul ma'ninu truma. But it does say that there's a distinction between the different parts of the kli as far as truma, only as far as kodesh not. So what do you mean to say? The brayso doesn't make sense. Maybe you mean to say not when you say kachei agvul, these words kachei agvul means kachim that are outside the base of mikdash. So you don't mean to say truma. Truma surely doesn't have that this chumrah. So chumrah means that it applies also to chulin shenasal kodesh, which we had already a couple of days. This concept that even if somebody takes chulin, but he treats it as if it's kodesh, so maybe it gets also the chumras of kodesh, and it's going to become vulnerable to a tumah that's only really attributed to kodesh. And you're saying that the halacha of chulin shenasal kodesh also, this halacha of acharayim b'toch is going to apply to that also. Is that what you mean? So he says, yeah, you reminded me, that's what I mean. You reminded me something that Rabbi Bar Abua said, Achas Esrim, we had this ready before. Achas Esrim Ma'alo Shanukan, there are 11 chumras in our Mishnah. Sheish Rishon is the Kodesh, the Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh. But Achron knows the Kodesh, Avalo the Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh. In our Mishnah it says 11 chumras, and there's a distinction, a division between the first 6 and the second and the last 5. The first 6 that says Dor the Tumah, the Raisa, over there we're machmir even on Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh. But by the last 5 which have no Dor the Tumah, the Raisa, that is, we'll see, we didn't get up to them yet, we'll see the last 5 over there. It's not so chomor, and we're not going to be machmir on Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh. So that's what the brayso meant to say. It didn't mean that kachei agvul. It didn't mean to say that truma has that chumra. Truma doesn't have that chumra. Only Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh has that chumra.
I'm missing the term al Taras HaKodesh.
Taras HaKodesh means that you treat it as if it would. There are different levels of keda that you have when you're dealing with chulin or truma or kodesh. Let's say a simple one that chulin only could become a sheni, and truma could become a shlishi. Kodesh could become even a revi. A person has chulin, and he says, "I'm going to treat this as if it's kodesh. I'm doing al Taras HaKodesh. It's chulin. I'm not saying that it's kodesh. It's chulin, but I'm going to treat it with the tar as if it's kodesh." So we would say that's his own business. What you want? He would say, if you want to practice. But no. The Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh, it really becomes vulnerable to that level of tumah, and it's going to be a chulin, which is still chulin, but it's going to be. But let's say there'd be a shlishi that touched it, a shlishi touched. Well, if you say Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh, it became tamei. If you say it's nothing, it's just chulin, so it wasn't affected because chulin can't become a revi. But if you say Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh kodesh, so it has the chumras of kodesh and it became tamei. It's chulin, which is tamei. That's the concept. And here the Gemara says that as far as these chumras of kodesh, all the chumras apply to Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh. So it says there's a division of 6 and 5. In our Mishnah there are 11 chumras, and the first 6 are going to apply to Chumras Nasal Taras HaKodesh because it's a serious chashash. called drawer the Tumah Deraisa, and the last 5 not. So this one that we said is number 2, that Kela, that Charai V'toch, Ubesa Tzvita, for Kodesh, for Chulin, but Truma, for not for Kodesh, is called drawer the Tumah Deraisa, and therefore, that was before a couple of pages, and therefore Chulin Shinasa Al Kodesh also has that Chumrah. Just to summarize today's Gemara, whatever we could, just to the beginning again, we mentioned that as far as having an opening of the Kli, that should be as far as I know, in order that the inside the Kli should be considered mikvah water, is only if the outer Kli is tohar and doesn't need the mikvah. But if the outer Kli is tameh, and by putting into the mikvah, you're being matayer it, and surely the Kli becomes tohar, and the water inside the Kli is considered connected to the outside water. So then it even helps for the kelim that you're being matpul inside of it. Also, you don't have to have a sheferes anod. The next time he brought a support from a Mishnah. After that, we also found the machlokes Tanam about the machlokes Ravila and Rava. If the reason for the chumrah of in mapil and kelim without kelim is because it might be heavy and machatzitza, or because there might be a small neck, and we found the machlokes Tanam were also arguing about that because Salberg Gusni was the machlokes, and machlokes if it's something of a kodesh or not. The Gemara had a long brisa with a lot of information. It comes out simple that first of all, the chumras of Kodesh, we only made that the Amoritz shouldn't learn from us mistakes. The Talmidei Chacham, they know what they're doing. They wouldn't make any mistake. But the Amoritz who's looking at a mikveh, goes to the Kelim mikveh of Kodesh, and he sees that the Talmidei Chacham are being not complete with complete. They're going to do the same thing. They'll make mistakes of doing heavy Kelim and small bottleneck Kelim. But by Truma, we don't have to be concerned about that because we don't need their Truma. Because we can't, because there's all kinds of cheshires of Truma. The Amoritz themselves, they give it to the Kohen Amoritz, and we can't help them because I'm a Yoretz, so what can we do for them? But by the Kodesh, it affects us. How does the Kodesh affect us? Because we do invite them to come to the Beis HaMikdash to bring the Kabbanis. Because if we're going to say you can't come to the Beis HaMikdash to bring your Kabbanis, he's going to make his own Beis HaMikdash. And we don't want that. We don't want to have the reform Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, we tell them, you could come in. And therefore, we make that it should be Torah as much as we can. The Gemara says that this chash of ego, animosity, we find that Yoshi says so, and that's why we invite that he can bring wine and oil, that he can come to the Beis HaMikdash, we trust his Torah, and of course, he's also careful more. And also the fact that I might have skipped this. I forgot if I skipped this when I taught it. That,
I didn't see it. I remember
maybe these 2 lines I skipped. That accept testimony. And maybe I skipped it. That when you accept testimony, really also minadin, we shouldn't accept testimony from Amoritz because he's not so careful to understand the intricacies of what he saw.
How you made his testimony?
Sadusa is testimony.
Oh, so what's that?
It means now. Like according to who do we accept testimony from Amoritz? Like Rabbi Yossi. There shouldn't be animosity. If we're going to say that we don't accept Amoritz to say testimony, they'll make their own bezdin. They'll make the reform bezdin also. So therefore we
and they do too.
So therefore we made that we do accept the testimony of Amoritz. The Gemara's next question, the next sugi was about why are we concerned? Why are we not concerned about the kelim?
We accept it, we don't know, but it has to be proven.
Okay, but he's an aide. He's an aide. It's not proven. We try to interrogate them, but like anybody. The Gemara's next point is that maybe we should be concerned about the kli tamei of Amoritz because we'll borrow the kelim. So to make a long story short, at the end of the Gemara says because when we're going to borrow it, we're going to put it into the mikvah. That's simple. Of course, we borrow kli of Amoritz, I put it into the mikvah and wait until tonight to have Erev Shemesh. But the Gemara does say that there's another mission over there that Beis Shammai spoke about, that sometimes it's not going to be enough just to borrow and put into the mikvah if there's too much mace involved. Too much mace involved, you'd have to borrow for 7 days and then put into the mikvah, wait for the 3rd day, and then for the 7th day to sprinkle it with the Mei Porah, Aduma, and you don't borrow a kli for 7 days. So therefore, they did take precaution to make sure that the Amor shouldn't have such problems. Usually the Amor knows halachas of Tumas Meis. There's one halach over here that we had to make in order that it shouldn't come to Tumas Meis without him realizing. That's the case of the Klicheres, which is blocking the Tumas Meis, and he doesn't realize that his Klicheres is Tamei, and it doesn't block the Tumas Meis. So we have to make a new takana that the Klicheres does not save Tuma from Kalim that can be put into the mikvah. So therefore, he's going to say, once we told him he accepts that, and he'll take care of it himself if it became Tamei Meis. And that's the Pshat of the mission over there by Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. We still also agree. The nice story about Rabbi Yeshua that he first spoke strongly against Beis Shammai, and then he realized he made a mistake, and he went to the Beis HaKvaros, and he appealed to them to forgive him, and he fasted for until his teeth became black from fasting, that he insulted the words of Beis Shammai.
Interesting, it says by Beis Shammai.
Yeah, they were
a bunch of.
They had the Beis HaKvaros of the Chalka of Beis Shammai, and he went to ask Mechila from them. The next point, the case of more points that weren't so clear to us, to me, that it spoke about when Amos comes to get sprinkled from Paraduma, we tell him come back in 2 days, but we're not sure that it's his third day. By the time of Chacham, we would trust him, and because of that, we do trust that if he says he was told, well, we do trust it. I missed the Gemara in between. Before that, it said that if Amos asking a straightforward question and it's a straightforward answer, you do trust him. But if it has intricacies that he might have made a mistake, then you don't trust him. The example given over here is that if he says that I never was told what people told me, so then you do trust him. But if he says I was, but I was careful that it should be a big cli, we don't trust him because then we don't know if he was measuring the right way. So similarly, if he says that these fruit never became, yes, I'm sorry. If he says that, fruit never became mukshal l'kabel tumah, we'll trust him. But if he says it did become mukshal l'kabel tumah but never became tumah, then we can't trust him already. The next Gemara spoke about what does that mean. Where's that? Achorayin b'toch. We wrote down the Mishnah that if water was on the outside of the kli and nitmu b'mashkin, so if it's outside of the kli, inside doesn't become tumah. That's the Mishnah that was saying that it only applies to the Truma, not the Kodesh. Kodesh, any Papika makes everything Tameh. Place that Svita means the handle. We have Tubshatim by Yitzpot, or the place where Nikia Das so win.
After that, it becomes Tameh, which doesn't, the Kli Cheres doesn't become Tameh.
No, it's not the Kli Cheres. This is talking about, no, that's something else. This is about a regular Kli that became Tameh Tumah Rabbanan.
Right.
Not Tumah Rabbanan, of course, any part of Kli becomes Tameh, the whole thing becomes Tameh. But by Tumah Rabbanan, like Mashkin, not really the Tameh Kli with the rice, it's only with Rabbanan. And on that, there's a halukah that if it came on the outside of the kli, not a kli cheres doesn't get affected at all. Even if a mace touches the outside of the kli, it doesn't become affected. But if mashkin, tmeim, or matamid outside of a kli, a metal kli, only the outside becomes tamei, not the inside or the handles and stuff. But if the inside became tamei, everything becomes tamei. By kodesh, any part of the kli makes everything tamei. And the last Gemara was that it's somewhat Bryce was quoted to say that kachak rule does not have this kula of a charayin b'toch. The whole thing is tamei, and the Gemara said it doesn't mean truma. It means kol shemasar ta'asa kodesh.
Kachak rule means
outside the Beis Hamikdash. Which question was outside the Beis Hamikdash? The Gemara thought it means truma. That's not true because the truma does not have the chumrah of a charayin b'toch, and it must mean kol shemasar ta'asa kodesh has the same thing as kodesh as far as the 6 first things of our Mishnah, and therefore the chalukah between whether it touch the outside or the inside or the handle, that does not apply to Kol Tznas Atas Kodesh. Everything is tamei the same way as Kodesh. Yes, Shekorach is a hard enough today. I hope everybody enjoyed whatever was there, and some information we surely got. And Bez Hashem will become Chaver one day. We'll know the whole thing. Thank you. And about 2 more minutes, we'll be starting Hilchos Muktzah again. Today's Thursday, and we'll be back in.
my friend Moshe Esses from New York.
Shalom.